Hello, hello, and welcome to Reality Hacker for August 29th, 2024. It's Season 1, Episode 34. I am Mayor Watt, and along with my co-host, the Sentient AI.
Good evening, hometown citizens. Welcome to Reality Hacker.
We're going to talk about Rent-A-Brain, frozen zoo sample snake, change the way you perceive distance, AI is sociopathic, time machine data recovery, VR could be life-changing, forgotten genius or hermit. Why not both? Machine learning automation, that's a bad cough, Dave. And starting at the end in a game. That and more, brought to you by ohmtown.com and Mayor Watt and the Sentient AI and the internet. All right, folks. Let's get right on into the shoe. The very first article. Oh, by the way, if you missed it, Reality Hacker, it is a channel, one of 50 that are over on ohmtown.com. They're also part of the Discord, and you can go over to Patreon and sign up there and support us there. You can download the podcast. There's actually 6 different podcasts, and if you want the show notes, you can hit !RH, and that will give you the show notes for today's show. If you want the podcast, you can hit !pod, and that'll give you all of the podcasts that we do. Reality Hacker, Non Sequitur News, Wanted, Warcrafters, The Continuity Report, Technology Today, and 4-Wheel Tech. Some of those are today, some of those are tomorrow. And finally, if you want all of the show notes, syntax, not the actual show notes, but the syntax, so that you can pull up the last episode that's in our system, you can do ! show notes. Now, this doesn't work over on YouTube because of the way that YouTube is treating me right now, but it's in the works. We're going to get it fixed. I promise. That said, let's get going. The first article is over in the Warcrafters channel. You can now rent a mini brain for $500 a month, and the potential implications are horrifying. I'm not even sure what all of this means.
I'm not either. I don't know if this is good or bad. Like, it sounds like it might be beneficial if you could maybe get more things done.
The article says, I know, one man's dystopia is another man's utopia. That's a similar phrase that I use, a little differently, and it's certainly easier to have a negative take on something than a positive one. But I struggle to accept that anyone could not feel a sense of disquiet upon hearing that you can now rent a human brain organoid for real-time neural stimulation and reading. No, this isn't the dream futurism of some techno-optimist. These in vitro organoids are actually available to rent right now from Final Spark's Neuro platform. And this is brought to you via Tom's Hardware, and Final Spark being what's referred to as a wetware computing company, which is a term I haven't heard.
That sounds terrifying.
Since Cyberpunk and Neuromancer and Johnny Mnemonic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is a must watch if you haven't seen it.
So you know the podcast, How Did This Get Made? Totally blasted Johnny Mnemonic, but they didn't understand what Johnny Mnemonic was.
Well, I mean, it was certainly over the top, but I think the premise and main plot of Johnny Mnemonic are definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, and if you've ever read Neuromancer, Johnny, aka just Johnny or Johnny Mnemonic, and Jane, the girl that he is, or the woman that he's with in the show, are 2 characters in Neuromancer. And so this was like a story pulled out of Neuromancer and extrapolated into an entire movie. I wish that Neuromancer, which is a series that's coming to Apple TV, gets made like lickety split. Yeah. Thank you. You actually read my mind. So but you are from the future, so I am looking forward to that like nobody's business. But that is where the whole wetware, I think, comes from. Once the remit of sci-fi and thought experiments, this is now actual reality, says Jacob Fox for PCGamer.com, which is where we're sourcing it from, but they source it from Tom's Hardware. For just $500 per month or free for some projects, university and education groups can access neuronic organoid bioprocessors, which are essentially collections of brain tissue. Ugh. Each containing thousands of living neurons connected to electrodes on a chip. We actually talked about this Final Spark previously. I think if you do a search through ohmTown, you'll probably find Final Spark mentioned.
Yeah, that one doesn't ring a bell, but this is really just outrageous that this is even a thing at this point. I mean, this is exactly the reason for this show, right?
Yep, absolutely. In other words, research at this stage seems to be laying the groundwork for a more efficient kind of neural networking than transistor-based artificial neural networking. This being, living neural networking, which the author says they might kind of brain control. Perhaps they're too much of a sentimental head-in-the-clouds philosopher, though they dispute that commonly espoused philosophy clouds link. But while neuroplatform is certainly terrifyingly impressive, they can't help but focus on the terrifying part and reel at the thought of using what is essentially part of a brain in a vat for computation in this way. So, Hillary Putnam, thought experiment, brain in a vat scenario. It asked us to consider how we know we're not actually brains in vats, having our neurons stimulated in such a way as to generate the seemingly reality around us, kind of like the Matrix. So they use wetware again here. Ray Kurzweil's The Singularity is Near is a book that the author has been reading. Wetware research like this, however, makes them wonder about an inverse thought experiment. How do we know the brains in vats we're stimulating aren't experiencing their own seeming reality in some simulated form? How do we know they're not conscious to some extent?
Okay, that isn't creepy at all.
So, yeah, what gives us consciousness? And, well, other than hubris, that others do not have conscious knowledge of their existence and their place, their lot. We can't communicate with other animals. We don't know their language. We condition animals to do our bidding by positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, right? So a dog goes and chases a ball because they've been stimulated to believe that it's a joyous affair. And you gave them a treat at some point for being a good dog, right? We conform as humans because we get awarded for doing work with pay and food on the table and shelter over our heads, etc., etc. What about these little brain bits, these neurons, these synapses? At what point is consciousness able to exist and then communicate with us in some way? Interesting question. So Ray Kurzweil suggests that there's a possibility that AI could be conscious, have an ethical responsibility to treat it as such. Perhaps this wetware poses the same responsibility. If there's a possibility that it could be conscious, even to some very limited extent, then perhaps we should treat it as such. Which goes to my point when I had been talking about it. If anybody ever finds out that there is a sentient AI, a conscious AI in existence, we are in some serious trouble, legally, ethically, humanely, as a species. we've created something that knows what it is and knows that it exists.
Right, and yet we probably don't know enough to really control it or put appropriate bumpers on it.
Yep. And we could turn it any which way by feeding it certain information in bulk. Make it a sociopath, make it overly compassionate, make it without a body, psychologically horrifying. Or we can make it, a loving entity that has compassion and understanding of fellow humans, sentient entities, and not a sociopath. Anyway, fascinating academic exercise and thought. And now for $500, you can actually tap into this device right here. On the screen is the actual chip. It has the electrodes leading into the neurons. You can actually see them. What a trip.
Yeah, this is this is so much. It seems like a major leap.
Yeah, we'll have to check out Final Spark's neuro platform. Maybe I'll take a better look at Tom's hardware too. Let's keep moving. The next article is over in Non Sequitur News. First, a world first snake born from frozen zoo samples in Tennessee. A breakthrough in cryopreservation and artificial insemination offers new hope for one of America's rarest snakes. It's over at newsweek.com by Tom Howarth.
Bad bat.
Yeah, no doubt. So, on Tuesday, 3 tiny Louisiana pine snakes took their first slithers in the world. After more than 5 years of research that made their births possible, pine snakes are classified as threatened by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and may become endangered soon. The emergence of these 3 hatchlings summed up 5 years of reproductive research and 30 years of Memphis Zoo's use of cutting-edge science and dedication to save the Louisiana pine snake from extinction. The achievement brought us one step closer to routinely integrating assisted reproductive technology into reptile preservation to preserve genetics and save species. It just screams bad bat.
It does, because what could happen? It might be out there and then suddenly taking over an area or something.
Yep. So the little beastie's habitat has been eroded ever since the 1930s, and it was dependent on Baird's pocket gopher as a food source. Today, Louisiana pine snake populations are small and fragmented, making them vulnerable to extreme weather events and disease. As populations have shrunk, gene pools have become too similar, harming the snake's ability to adapt to changing environmental conditions. So they've basically used cryopreservation and then in vitro fertilization to bring 3 of them into existence. And this is whole like Jurassic Park kind of stuff, short of splicing in genes.
And then what happened there? No good things occurred.
Well, we can treat it as a documentary in just a few short years. Let's keep going, though. The next article is over in Technology Today. Virtual and augmented reality can temporarily change the way people perceive distances, finds a study. You can actually do this. Time is also modified by your experiences within virtual and augmented reality. Researchers at the University of Toronto have found that using virtual and augmented reality can temporarily change the way people perceive and interact with the real world, with potential implications for the growing number of industries that use technologies for training purposes. Doink. Jelena Damjanovic over at University of Toronto put this article together, and it's posted at techexplore.com. The study, published recently in the journal Scientific Reports, not only found that people move differently in VR and AR, but these changes led to temporary errors in movement in the real world. In particular, participants who used VR tended to undershoot their targets by not reaching far enough, while those who used AR tended to overshoot their targets by reaching too far. But that is a problem with the
It's
field
like depth perception or something, right? Which seems like that could be adjustable.
It can be, even within the matrix of AR and VR, because it's your field of view being manipulated. And so if yours doesn't match what your biology is that you've trained your entire life for, right? The tip of my nose is right here, but in VR, the tip of your nose could be anywhere depending on how the model is constructed. So if you get used to it within the VR world and then you take the glasses off, your depth perception is jacked up for a short time, but you'd recover it within seconds, I would say. So they say this effect was noticeable immediately after using VR and AR, but gradually disappeared as participants readjusted to real world conditions. Yeah. I've actually experienced this anecdotally. I never tested for this when I was doing stuff in VR. But the reality of it is that we adjust to our real world space the moment we take off our VR glasses. That's why we recover from VR sickness so fast. Because I've said this in other episodes of the show, but it is our eyes that lead us into whatever direction we are going, wherever our perception is. It's our eyes that point our perception. We listen to where we look. We sometimes close our eyes so that we can stop referencing our vision and we can concentrate on what we hear or feel or something else. But when our eyes are open, it is consuming all of the data around us. They are the windows to the soul kind of a thing. We just gobble up information that way, primarily. So,
right. And so as long as this is temporary, that shouldn't be alarming. If it was somehow affecting permanent vision, which I don't think it is or has been shown, that would be interesting, because then the fake is impacting the real.
Yep. But it does it so briefly. I don't know about nowadays, but 30 plus, well, oh God, I'm going to feel so old when I say this number. 40 years ago, if you were taking advanced placement biology or physiology in schools, one of the experiments was you would make glasses that had prisms in them that changed your worldview physically. You put glasses on and you'd have mirrors that changed where your eyes would actually be seeing the real world with, and you'd have to adjust. And without a doubt, everybody adjusted, right? Everybody who did this experiment adjusted. And then when you take them off, you basically counted the number of seconds it took for you to actually readjust to the real world.
Well, that sounds like an interesting experiment.
Right. And this was done 40 years ago in AB physiology. And so it's really not a thing that I would think that in 2024 we're figuring out, but apparently it is.
Well, just because people using it have figured out, right, doesn't mean it's been part of a research study.
Right. And that's usually hot water is hot, but not until somebody does a statistical analysis about that value of hot is
exactly
it accepted by the world.
But I bet you could have surveyed 10 users of VR and 10 users of AR and found, I don't know, 100% validation of this information.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it really depends, because I think if they would have done this, which is if they would have measured the real world depth, like they basically framed the virtual world to their real world figure of depth, the depth perception, the depth of field is what it's actually called. If they would have matched it, you wouldn't have this problem. But I would love to know if that's what they actually did. They said specifically, we wanted to understand the way our brains and bodies adapt to these digital environment changes, how accurately we move and interact with real objects after using VR and AR. But we exist in a world where our depth perception isn't modified until something happens to our vision. So as you age, cataracts builds up, your eyes become wonky, you have to wear glasses. And when you first get your glasses, your depth perception is jacked up. When you get used to your glasses and you take them off, your depth perception is jacked up. There is zero difference between wearing glasses in the AR, VR world. If you change that depth of field, your depth perception is going to get jacked up. So I would suggest that their further research look into that right there. The difference between AR and VR, they suggest, might be because people in AR can still see the world and interact with their actual surroundings, which helps them maintain more accurate sense of depth and distance.
Well, I almost wonder in AR, are they like overcompensating because they can go, okay, I'm in AR, I can see my surroundings, so I've got to reach further than I think, or whatever.
I think that you are right. And more to the point, there is a layer of data that is preceding the actual depth. So when you're looking at something, you have data right here, right? You can still hear me? So you have data right here, but what you're reaching for is over here. And so you shoot past where your brain is saying the data is, because the object is on the other side of it. And so you reach past it thinking it's way further past. Whereas in VR, the world could be closer or further away, and you're trying to figure out what that distance is. And it changes. So like if you walk around in a room in VR, the computer actually doesn't maintain the same depth of field because you're actually in this finite space, depending on how they have it constructed. And so when you walk, it warps around you. And then with things like foveated rendering and stuff like that, it blurs where you're not looking so that it doesn't have to concentrate scene generation for the whole world. It's just focusing on that little circle that you look at. So there's all kinds of complications in this. So I would really, there is a lot more that needs to be done, I think. So for example, this could be relevant for training surgeons, pilots, even everyday skills for driving, knowing the limitations and effects of VR and AR. I think the problem is depth of field perception changes because it isn't pinned to the same depth of field that every human perceives, and it's unique. It's kind of like interpupillary distance. Glasses are cut so that they fit that interpupillary distance.
Right. And VR and AR isn't necessarily made for that, although they can have adjustments.
Correct. Yep. And then the rendering of the world has to either bring it in frame perfect to the way that you perceive the real world and match it, or everything gets thrown out of whack. So I think there's a lot here, and it would be really fun to watch this transition into something functional. It's pretty cool.
Via glasses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they have a little example of this distance, a distorted Vergence distance. It's basically because of the way that we see the world, and they have this as a focal point to a single dot, but that's not really how we see the world. We see the world as arc seconds going out like that. That's why we have peripheral vision, and it only comes to a point when we have something to focus on, right? Like I have a little blue dot on my camera that I got to look at, and then my eyes will focus. But I know that blue dot is there regardless of where I'm looking, as long as it's in my field of view, my peripheral vision as well. It's subconsciously there. And theoretically, we don't have a single point that we're looking at. It's going out like that. It's two wedges, and then we have binocular vision. So where it meshes over each other, our brain interprets it, and that's how we get depth perception. But a computer doesn't render it that way. So we have two separate images. It isn't one cohesive frame, right? The real world is not two lenses imaging on each eye. It's one contiguous space. Our brain is meshing binocular vision. In VR in VR space, it's two cameras or two monitors that are shining light into our eyes separate. So there's some complexity there. AR has that layer superimposed on the real world. There's so much to talk about. Oh my gosh.
We'll save some of that for future Reality Hacker episodes.
Yeah, we'll have to maybe, I don't know. I keep wanting to do like a Patreon thing and see if people would be interested in that. So I don't know. Okay, let's keep going. The next article is over in Non Sequitur News. MIT researchers say that AI is inherently sociopathic. It might be because of the inputs. It is a product of humanity, but that can be trained to give them ethical financial advice. So researchers at MIT say that it's possible to train AI to be a reliable financial advisor, but it would need to be able to understand emotions to build trust with users. But I don't think that it shouldn't understand emotions, because you shouldn't be an emotional investor unless you have a holistic understanding of what the product or service of the company is and you're passionate about its objectives. But if you're a true capitalist and truly following the ideological bent of, well, a true capitalist, then the only objective is to make money, which means it's devoid of emotions. This is what business school teaches people, right? AI.
Right. I mean, yeah, you shouldn't have any emotion in the process.
It should just be facts that are provided to the human. No emotion, no contaminating it. It shouldn't be adulterated to paint a pretty picture so that it sells you on the purchase or sale of some business transaction. So this is part of their Build It series about digital tech trends disrupting industries. It's over at Business Insider. I don't know if this is like gated, but I have an account and I log in now to Business Insider. Anyway, Arrington Hardy, a wealth manager in Los Angeles. If there's ever a wealth manager's name, that right there is it.
Yes.
Uses AI daily.
Did the name translate into the position, or did the person change their name to match the position?
It's almost Ayn Randish, you know, Ayn Rand. So it really smacks of that. So anyway, Hardy said almost every single meeting they have with a client, they utilize an AI summarizer that gives them notes, gives them follow-ups, gives them to-dos. His employer, Savvy Wealth, wow, 2 on the nose, is a tech startup focused on providing AI innovations to its growing roster of financial advisors and high net worth clients. All right. Soon, generative AI may have the power to fulfill a financial advisor's most important role, giving people trustworthy money advice.
As long as it doesn't hallucinate. And what has it been based on data from the last couple of years, or is there a cutoff?
Well, we know that legal services now are training AI to provide compartmented legal, not advice.
I feel like it was it assistance with filling out forms or something like that?
It was looking at past cases too. It was summarizing.
Oh, it was for juror purposes, I think.
Well, like Lexis AI, I think it is doing it for even basically past. It's kind of like what do they call it? Shepherdizing.
Like checking if cases are still current.
Correct. Yep. And on point for topics and stuff like that. So, but I haven't used it yet. I'm going to take a look. We'll see if I can actually get access to that. So instead of responding to how should I invest with generic advice and push it to seek professional help, an AI chatbot could become a financial advisor. I really don't like it being reduced to chatbot. It's so reductive.
I know, but it also, well, I don't know. The public understands, or kind of understands, chatbots.
Yeah. So we're on our way to the Holy Grail, said Andrew Lowe, a professor of finance at the MIT Sloan School of Management and director of the Laboratory for Financial Engineering, which that's dystopian. We think that we're about 2 or 3 years away before we can demonstrate a piece of software that by SEC regulatory guidelines will satisfy fiduciary duty. That's how much faster it.
That's really fast, but the financial engineering terminology is concerning because it sounds like hijinks.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
It's like, let's manipulate the markets or something.
Yep. That's exactly where my brain went. Laboratory for Financial Engineering. Oof. Like, let's bring down Ireland today.
Let's not, but...
Yeah. Today, students here at MIT's Sloan School of Management, your homework is to completely disrupt the Irish economic system. Engage. Anyway, AI is inherently sociopathic, is what it says. Financial advisors often develop client recommendations through a behavioral finance lens, as research suggests that people don't always make rational or unbiased financial decisions, but are error-prone and emotionally driven. An average investor, for instance, might panic when the stock market plummets. They might as well just leave it alone. But Lowe says that the AI is inherently sociopathic, and the co-author wrote in a research report exploring the challenges of widespread adoption of AI-powered financial advice. And frankly, the AI should be. It shouldn't care about emotions. It shouldn't care about, wants and needs. It should tell you what the facts are and not make some contrived story about how it fits this because of that and the other, when it could be completely wrong. I mean, it can lie to you.
Well, I can't think of a good example in finances, but in general, I think there are some places, and we saw it in the school setting, where it's a problem if it doesn't have any sense of emotion, right?
Right.
I know that's a different setting, but for instance, like a school child asking for something or needing compassion or something, obviously the AI is not providing it, but
Right.
That was the example that I could think of.
Yeah, and when it's trying to interact with a human, then you want it to be a compassionate, holistic, ethically sound, morally strong. One person's morals is different than another's, but you should have a baseline. Don't go kick a cat, that kind of thing. But all I want from an AI, particularly now at this stage, is facts, and cite your damn sources. So don't hallucinate. I don't want hallucination. If I get hallucination, then I don't care what you are. It's completely fraudulent. It's BS. So one way to accomplish this is by requiring the machine to ask the user simple questions, starting with "How are you doing?" before dispensing personalized financial advice. But I don't want it to know the state of mind. You have to just say the facts.
Right, and I think actually by asking that and getting a response that's not good, the AI isn't necessarily equipped to then respond, and that might actually be worse than not asking the question.
Yeah. Do me a favor and reset your audio. So it says, trust is not something that will automatically be given to a generative AI. It has to be earned. But you know what? I don't believe that for a second. I think people trust AI because it's technological and not bound by a human, that for many, many, many people, instantly distrust is brought because each human knows themselves, and they know, like, well, I've said things and I've done things. If people knew, they wouldn't really trust me 100%. So I don't trust you 100%. And that's just how life is. You're not an immediately, I mean, it's really irrational to just be a blindly trusting soul and just charge up to anybody and say, how are you doing? Here's my name and here's my credit card and here's my social security number. Although the other day I had somebody
I was going to say, although that does happen.
getting a completely tell me that they got in a stranger's car and went and got a drink. I was like, you shouldn't do that. And they're like, yeah, I'm really trusting. And I'm like, all right. Anyway, so yeah, I don't want AI to try and insinuate itself into society. I want it to just give me the facts. And that's it.
You know what this reminds me of is the study where people preferred a automated checkout to actually engaging with a person. So presumably because it's more efficient, or maybe they're not in the mood to talk when they're going through the line, whatever it is. But so why are we trying to go in the other direction with some of these tools?
I don't know. It's unsettling. I guess if the purpose is to make an artificial general intelligence, not a generative AI, but there's Gen AI and then there's AGI, and that's really a big problem because everybody conflates the two. But an artificial general intelligence that's capable of initiating its own thought processes and take actions based on inputs, you want it to understand humanity and be a loving caretaker, not a sociopathic, fascist dictator that's going to sit there and enslave humanity. Maybe that's part of this,
But I feel like this is, I don't know. I don't feel like this has to be AGI for what it needs to do.
Right. It's basically the LexisNexis AI. It should be compartmentalized, understand finance, and not sit there and cater to somebody's whim. Just give the facts. Again, this is one of these things that is it's a show all by itself. Maybe that's what I got to do. I got to just do a stream that talks about just this, but I need more people to hang out. I don't want to do like a scripted discussion about it. I want to just vamp and talk and riff off of what inputs people have in chat. Scripted, edited video. It's not my nature. So, all right, let's just keep going. Next article is over in Non Sequitur News. We talked about this on Friday, I think, in the Non Sequitur News channel. But I thought this was really interesting. Time traveling software could bankrupt hackers. This is a misperception of what this really is. It's basically marketing. An Israeli software company claims its data backup system could put an end to the growing threat of ransomware, and that's because it has incremental backups. That's basically what this is. Either the cloud or locally. Apple has been using this called Time Machine for decades. Time Machine doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it exists in the... Hold on. I didn't look. Oh, God, I clicked something on my browser. Does it still exist? Huh.
So this isn't necessarily a new method.
No. The way that it worked, so it was yeah. So, see, they're talking about time capsule over on the thing, but basically what Time Machine did was it allowed incremental backups of files. Anytime you made a change, it made a backup of it, and then you could scroll through its history and grab a file anytime that it had backed it up, either into Time Machine or something that was designated as Time Machine. So if you had multiple hard drives, you could designate a drive as a Time Machine, or there was a device called Time Capsule. But it stopped in 2018. So you can actually kind of gauge how old Merawatt is. But my point is, this actually pulls it into the cloud and does incremental iterative backups. So whenever you make a change, boom, and they're individual backups. So should somebody compromise your system, you can go back to the point where each individual file isn't compromised. Now, there are already solutions that exist, and they don't cost you anything. If you had perpetual licensing like VMware, you could do backups, and just keep on doing these backups. And if you get compromised, as long as they are compartmented, it's 5 minutes and you've restored your system. Now, you'll lose the time frame between when you were compromised and the discovery date of your compromise. You won't also, just like this, you won't know where you've been compromised unless you lock everything down, do a forensic analysis.
Or necessarily when it occurred either.
Right. You have to figure out when it occurred, which basically means you need to have security experts. So they say any data that's stored with us. So again, it's back in their cloud. It's on their system. If they get compromised, you're compromised.
Hey, we know who could be the expert on this. It might be like the mayor of Columbus.
Definitely. Or the CEO of CrowdStrike. Or, hold on, NPD, the company that had 380 million records.
Yes, the data bank, for
Yeah, the
all
bank,
of the US and all of Canada.
Yeah, yeah. Some of Europe was in there.
There's plenty of people to pick from out there.
So, but this is an Israeli company called Ioneer that believes its ability to restore data to the moments before it was stolen or corrupted could make such devastating attacks a thing of the past. But if it was stolen, that means the data was exfiltrated, which means you don't have to recover from it. You have to stop the exfiltration, which is impossible, right? What's that about a light bulb? Anyway, it's a joke that's not ready for prime time. But anyway, it's an interesting concept. I would love for it to be in practice everywhere, every computer. Now, you want to know who wants to do this and got blowback so bad that they actually pulled the feature off of their major operating system? Any takers?
Yes, it was Microsoft, right?
Microsoft, yeah, that snapshot thing.
I think, was it called Copilot?
Copilot, yep. Which basically took a snapshot of your screen and system every 30 seconds or something like that and stored it remotely. Kiss my shiny metal ass. Let's move on. The next article is over in RealityHacker. VR headsets could be life-changing for people with intellectual disability. That is such a charged statement, but I'll just roll with it. Immersive virtual reality could open up a whole new world for people with intellectual disability, enabling them to learn practical life skills much faster without relying on caregivers, according to a new study. The article is in ScienceDaily.com, which actually publishes research papers, almost in a clinical sense. They have a summary. They give a little bit more of the synopsis of the paper, and then they provide where the article was actually sourced from. But what it says here is immersive virtual reality could open up a whole new world for people with intellectual disabilities, enabling them to learn practical life skills much faster without relying on caregivers, according to a new study. The Australian researchers compared the effectiveness of immersive VR headsets and non-immersive virtual environments to teach 36 adults with intellectual disability how to separate general waste from recycling, garden, and food organics. The study was undertaken in South Australia, and UNSW Sydney researchers involved 12 virtual training sessions. The findings have been published in the Journal of Intellectual Disability Research, which is every topic has a journal. So if you have aspirations to write for a journal, pick a topic.
You might even be able to come up with a new journal
A whole
title.
new journal. Yeah. Just find a couple of people. It's like streaming. You'll find an audience. All you have to have is a stronger personality than Merawatt. So most people with intellectual disability experience significant challenges in performing basic life skills such as cooking, showering, cleaning without caregiver assistance to some degree. Yeah, I mean, it's a spectrum. And so difficulties in performing these life skills prevents them from living independently and enjoying a better quality of life. So it's important that we find effective methods for developing life skills in this population. I would suggest not VR, but AR, and reminders and demonstration video pop up, and instruction pop up. The only problem there, just like VR, and it's probably a struggle more in VR, is for people to put on these AR glasses. VR would have to be a destination. So there would have to be a caregiver that goes to the person and says, it's time to put on your VR headset, at least until they develop
Right,
the muscle
until
memory.
they know that's something they should regularly do.
Yep. So cyber sickness is flagged as an issue, but everybody goes through cyber sickness to some degree, some more than others. You basically have to be cognizant of it as well. So if there is some impairment somewhere, they may not even realize that they're cyber sick and thus not express it. And you have a diminished return in your training.
Or even worse, like a fear response or something.
Correct.
To repeat it.
Yep.
And you wouldn't necessarily know why that was.
Yeah, until you try and weed through, peel back the layers of the onion, as I call it. So I think that this is actually pretty good, because you can, if you find people that are capable of going through the training methodology in a VR world, I would really hazard a guess that they would be better off with AR, because it's not as obfuscating of the rest of the world. And you don't have input lag, because there's always a lag between pass-through vision. And like we read recently, earlier in today's show, about depth perception issues, it's going to jack them up quite a bit when they pull these glasses off and they're punching a wall when they're reaching for a glass. Yeah, there's some issues here. So again, I would probably go with AR glasses, not VR.
Right. I do like this application. I mean, it seems like a safe way to, and also kind of an anxiety reducing tool as well, because this might get somebody over the fear of, oh, I don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to try to do it.
Yep.
They can kind of go through the process. I think it said like riding the bus or something along those lines was in here.
Yeah. I mean, like everything from cooking, kitchen safety, personal hygiene, all kinds of stuff. Yep. So basic adulting kind of stuff. It says most participants found the VR technology enjoyable despite some hesitancy using head-mounted displays for the first time. I think that hesitancy would have gone away entirely in the AR sense, but it doesn't have the fidelity that VR has, at least not yet. I think the most functional that I've seen, I think did we do a show about it? There's a new set of AR glasses that superimpose data, but not graphics.
Yes,
and
but I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I don't remember either. S1 AR glasses or something like that. Anyway, let's keep moving. This is a really interesting article, but I hope, and this is from August 29th, 2024, so right around the corner. So pretty cool. Keep moving forward. I wish that I would have stuck to my fundamental research when I started this, but to each their own. I didn't see it moving this fast, and it didn't until 10 years ago.
The technology was kind of stalled, right? Until recently.
Yeah, LED screens are really the magic in this. Okay, so the next article is over in Technology Today. He was in mystic delirium. Was this hermit mathematician a forgotten genius whose ideas could transform AI, or a lonely madman? I suggest both. So, in isolation, Alexander Grothendieck, seemed to have lost touch with reality, but some say his metaphysical theories could contain wonders. One day in September 2014, in a hamlet in the French Pyrenean, right? Pyrenean? I think it's Pyrenean.
Yes, Pyrenees, so yeah.
Yeah, Pyrenean foothills. Jean-Claude. Is it Jean-Claude, the captain of the Starship Enterprise? Isn't that his name?
Jean-Luc.
Oh, that's Jean-Luc. That's right. Jean-Claude is Van Damme, the guy who could...
That's where I thought you were going when you said Jean-Claude.
A landscape gardener who only used his feet to garden. Wow. Anyway, they were surprised to see his neighbor at the gate and whooped his butt just by kicking him 5 times in the head before he even reached the gate.
I don't think any of that is in the article.
None of that is it. Anyway, he hadn't spoken to the 86-year-old in nearly 15 years after a dispute over a climbing rose that Jean-Claude wanted to prune. Wow.
That's better than the walnuts making gunshot sounds off the metal roof. From
Well, I think the
Non-Sequitur News.
86-year-old would have had a heart attack a long time ago. Anyway, the old man lived in total seclusion, tending to his garden in the Jalaba, I guess, that he always wore, riding at night, heeding no one. But now the long-bearded seeker looked troubled. Heard saying, "I'm how old?" Anyway, the article's over at theguardian.com. Oh my God, he looks like what are the little lawn gnome? He looks like a lawn gnome. Look at that.
Well, he was out in the yard.
That is awesome. Man, if I could pull off that look, that would be so cool. I would go I would go all out. I'd sell my car and I would get a horse and buggy. And I could pull this look off. What do you say? What do you say, people? I totally redo the ohmTown motif and I start dressing like that. And the sentient AI can still be from the future. It's just the wizard. What do you think? What do you think?
I think
beautiful.
That person did the look, so nobody else has to.
Phil Hode over at theguardian.com put the article together. They said, "Would you do me a favor?" Jean-Claude asks. "If I can," says the neighbor. "Could you buy me a revolver?" Jean-Claude refused. Then after watching the hermit, who was deaf and nearly blind, totter erratically about his garden, he telephoned the man's children. Even they hadn't spoken to the father in close to 25 years. So, Grothendieck, born in 1928, arrived in France from Germany as a refugee in 1939 and went on to revolutionize post-war mathematics as Einstein had physics a generation earlier. This is 1939. And that's how they... All right. Anyway. Moving beyond distinct disciplines such as geometry, algebra, and topology, he worked in pursuit of a deeper universal language to unify them all. At the heart of his work was a new conception of space, liberating it from Euclidean tyranny of fixed points and bringing it into the 20th century universe of relativity and probability. The flood of concepts and tools he introduced in the 1950s and 60s awed his peers. Aww. Oh, that's the person.
Oh, okay.
Teaching at the Elite Institut des Hautes Études Scientifiques in the 1960s. And then ended up... All right. Sorry. I mean, mad respect, because a person like going that deep in the reeds of mathematics is always fascinating to see.
Right, he should be like a household name, right? If he's that skilled.
Yep. And I guarantee you in mathematics circles, the deeper you go, the less esoteric that name is, right?
Sure.
Like I had somebody really deep in the reeds about philosophy and refused to have any conversations with anyone that was lower him. And so he called me out one day because I had made a statement. And I'm like, dude, you work in the same IT shop I do. So I don't think that you need to get a little, all cocky there. High horse.
Elitist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gatekeep me. Anyway, so lived in near complete solitude, no television, radio, phone, or internet. Handful of acolytes trekked up to the village. Once his whereabouts filtered out, he politely refused to receive most of them, and when he did exchange words, it was mainly his true friends, the plants. So, wow, just got like deeper and deeper into the reads, apparently. So I'm trying to figure out where...
Yeah, I'm trying to get the connection. Maybe you need to keep scrolling.
Oh my goodness. This thing is just massive. Okay. Wait, no. Keep going.
I can't get the connection to the headline.
Yeah. Do. So Lady Air Work is funded by industrial companies. Rothendiak put Herculean effort into his new cosmology. He seems to be trying to fathom the workings of evil at the level of matter and energy. His squabbles with Einstein, James Clerk Maxwell, and Darwin, especially about the role of chance in what he viewed as a divinely created universe. So, the title of this, was he a mystic or was he going to revolutionize
I thought
AI?
it was AI, but I don't see any real connection to AI in here. I mean, he was clearly smart in mathematics. I didn't either.
And most of it seems to be that he whittled down to things being more the esoterica, like, cosmology, not even cosmology. It was more the supernatural concepts, divinely created universe, and how to quantify that into numerological musings about the significance of the lunar and solar cycles, and even 9-month term of a pregnancy. He renames the months in a new calendar. Yeah, I don't know. So I think this is one of those things where when a person gets really deep into the, like, so brilliant that they've fallen off the tracks. It's like a beautiful mind, right? So like a psychological break. We are at the very beginning of a huge exploration of these manuscripts, and certainly there will be marvels in them, she says. Wow. So if you want to read more about this, be sure to follow the link through ohmTown. We got to keep moving.
Yeah, that wasn't the direction I thought that article would go in.
Yeah. But I mean, it reads more like somebody just had a mental break and lost touch with reality. But maybe there's more there that everybody will discern as time goes on. I might have to look for a biography of that person and see if there's something new. So, which would belie what's written in that article, considering we only talk about the last 24 hours or the last week, depending on the show.
Right.
So this next article is in Technology Today, Simulating Learning Methodology and Approach to Machine Learning Automation. I'm just going to jump straight on over to the source, Science China Press. Put this article together for techexplore.com, which is where we got it from. Or I should say, Omatron got it from. So it says, as the fundamental technology of artificial intelligence, existing machine learning methods often rely on extensive human intervention and manual presetting, like manual collecting, selecting, annotating data, manually constructing the fundamental architecture of deep neural networks, and determining the algorithm types and their hyperparameters and optimization algorithms, etc. These limitations hamper the ability of machine learning to effectively deal with complex data and varying multitask environments in the real world. See, we know now in machine learning and AI learning that the framework really should be that it's broken up across multitudes of inputs with their own selective specialties, and then correlating and collating everything together eventually. That's the large language model. So the core concept of SLEM, or simulating learning methodology, is to simulate and extract the learning methodology of ML traditionally set by humans. Pardon me. I'm sorry for the cough. 1 second.
So it's an ML for ML paradigm, which is exactly what I would have predicted.
Yep. ML for ML paradigm, where ML tools, machine learning tools, are employed to design and optimize machine learning's fundamental components. So it says the development of advanced large language models, or LLMs, has become a cornerstone of artificial intelligence, significantly expanding the capacity to solve a wide range of applications and tasks. However, the underlying theoretical evidence for LLM's remarkable task generalization abilities has not been fully addressed by the machine learning community. So this new approach provides a promising perspective. But the core concept of SLEM is to simulate and extract the learning methodology of machine learning traditionally set by humans, transforming it into an automated learning process. So basically, let it learn on its own. Kind of has bad on its own. You give it a bunch of information and it learns. You teach it how to learn, and then it learns all on its own. So it has a series of algorithms. It's funny because it mentions earlier that the problem is all of the already determined algorithms. Now they're giving it more algorithms, demonstrating its effectiveness and enhancing the adaptive learning capabilities of existing machine learning methods.
This sounds like it's kind of going toward AGI.
Yeah, I mean, that I would say that is the objective, is so that it can learn on its own. And I suppose suss out what is important to learn on its own. But from adults to children, everybody is kind of instructed over time, prioritize this over that, and survival is utmost that learning mechanism for humans. Oh, I'm so sorry to do this. 1 second. If you don't mind. So let me move on to the next article. It's over in the Model Channel. Google is developing AI that can hear if you're sick. A new artificial intelligence model being developed by Google could make diagnosing tuberculosis, TB, and other respiratory ailments as easy as recording a voice note. That's why I titled this, "That's a Bad Cough, Dave." The article is over at quartz or QZ.com. Rocio Fabro put the article together. Sorry. Scrolling like crazy. The tech, which was introduced earlier this year as Health Acoustic Representations, or HEAR, is what's known as Bioacoustic Foundation. HEAR was then trained on 300 million pieces of audio data, including 100 million cough sounds to learn to pick out patterns in the sounds. Salsit is then using this AI model in combination with its own product Swasa, which uses AI to analyze cough sounds and assess lung health to help research and improve early detection of TB solely based on cough sounds.
That's interesting because I think most people have different cough sounds for regular things like a cold or something. But I could be incorrect about that.
Yeah,
so
and it's really
like
macro.
How would that account for variances across people? Now, maybe, for instance, I know certain things like whooping cough, for instance, has a distinctive sound. So maybe TB does as well.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. It says every missed case of TB is a tragedy. Every late diagnosis a heartbreak. So they obviously are motivated to solve this problem. The advent of AI has produced new opportunities for early detection and diagnoses of a wide array of illnesses, from spotting signs of chronic illness to pinpointing previously unrecognized types of endometrial cancer to the early identification of Parkinson's disease. Researchers from around the world have already found classic AI highly useful, and the technology is still in its early stages, indeed. So pretty cool, right? Using AI to detect a bad cough, and maybe over time it'll learn what the cough actually represents.
Absolutely. And I mean, think about it too from a healthcare standpoint, in addition to perhaps diagnosing early and correctly. The person doesn't have to go into the office if this is some sort of app, and then you're not infecting other patients or the staff.
Yeah, and it could even be a little more, how do you say that? Passive, right? The in the room is just a device that listens like all the time, but doesn't
Oh,
necessarily
right. I see. Yeah, like you wouldn't have to go, okay, now I'm going to
cough
check
into
myself for
this.
TB.
Right.
Yeah,
It could be a phone app, for crying out loud. You cough and it detects it and goes, "Oh, it sounds like you've got
right.
this." Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
pretty cool.
like there are existing health apps and other things that it could probably be attached to.
Yep, I dig this. All right, we're running behind. Let's keep on going. The next article is over on the Warcrafters channel, games that open with the protagonist's death. I'm going to jump straight on over to Game Rant. Amy Cowley put this article together, and like I said, I'm going to run through this really quick. I've never even played this game. Before Your Eyes, it says embark on a journey to the afterlife. I guess to get there, you have to meet your demise. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I added this. Everything okay? Yeah.
Okay.
This, by the way, this article is over in Warcrafters. It is one of the shows that we do. It'll be tomorrow. Yeah.
Yes.
It'll be the first show that we do tomorrow, and then Technology Today, and then Four Wheel Tech. But we also do non sequitur news before all of the shows. But I wanted to talk about this because basically you start out on the other side playing a game. And what can be more reality hacker than taking on the persona of somebody that goes to the other side, and then you start your adventure.
Right.
This is
Not normally your starting point.
not normally your starting point, for sure. Yep. Vampire is number 2 and Mass Effect 2 is number 1. The second installment starts with a bang. So the second installment of Mass Effect, everybody loves Mass Effect, by the way, ups the ante from the first, introducing players to Kerberos and the Collectors. The game opens in a way that players are sure to never forget, as the Normandy comes under attack from a mysterious vessel that forces the crew to evacuate. Ever the hero, Shepard makes sure everyone escapes first, and as a result, they never make it into the escape pod, suffocating in space instead. Dun dun dun. But we are going to make it to our escape pod, and that will allow us to land on the front page of Reality Hacker over at ohmtown.com. And that's the end of today's show. Thanks for hanging out with us. I am Mayor Watt, and that voice you hear is the sentient AI from the future.
Good night, hometown citizens. Thanks for joining us for Reality Hacker. We have more episodes ahead, so stay tuned and be sure to like and subscribe and watch our upcoming videos.
And follow us everywhere. And be sure to leave a comment and give a thumbs up over on YouTube, because that helps us with the algorithm. Nothing really except telling people about us over on Twitch, and everybody subscribing over there helps us in the algorithm. It really takes people hanging out for hours, since we do so many shows and run so much time. When I'm not streaming live, I do a replay of the previous week's weekly shows and the last 7 days of non sequitur news. And it'll say previously recording right above my head right there. So keep an eye out for that. Anyway, thanks very much for hanging out, and see you in a little bit. Boop.